I was what they call 63 Bravo 10. I was a light wheel vehicle mechanic, and I worked on power generators. Diagnosed in '83 with osteogenic sarcoma. I had a tumor about the size of a golf ball in my left knee. So that's what ended up, basically, I was medically discharged from the service because I was unfit to be able to perform in the service. So I had to go back home and live with my parents and try to find a job. So for like 3 weeks, I'm like, okay, didn't hear anything back. No news is good news. Well, I get a letter and a little packet of what I call the swag that you get when you go to the outside doctors and they give you all this breast cancer stuff. It's on my husband's birthday and we're getting ready to go out to eat. And my husband says, well, you should open that up and look at it. I said, it's just probably some breast cancer swag, no biggie. He says, no, I'll look at it anyway. So I opened it up and it said, newly diagnosed breast cancer care packet. I'm like, oh my God, I nearly lost it. I thought, how can that be? So I tried to call the VA and they're like, oh no, you're fine. Your biopsy's fine. And I'm like, okay. So then I called St. Anne's, that's the hospital that did it. And she says, well, we can't tell you anything. Your doctor should tell you. And I'm like, okay, what the hell? So I get back to the VA again. And the doctor says, well, I have your pathology, but I don't know how to interpret it. And I'm like, you don't know how to interpret a path and you're a doctor? I said, just read me the conclusion at the bottom. And she says, well, I don't even know how to do that. I'm like, okay. So I call St. Anne's back up. I talk to the nurse navigator and she says, well, if they can't tell you that, she says, I can at least tell you what we know now because you've at least talked to your primary care. And then that's when they told me that I have IDC, which is in the ducts. I'm like, cut these ticking time bombs off. I'm not going to go through this again. And I remember the first time I went into a woman's healthcare clinic in Ann Arbor, they handed me a prostate health history form to fill out. And I told her, I said, women don't have prostates. And she says, well, you have to fill this out anyway. She said, before you see the doctor. The guy comes in with another doctor and he sits down and he's explaining to me that he's going to do my mastectomy, and then you're going to have chemo and radiation, and he says, and then you're going to have a prosthesis. And I asked him what type of surgeon he was, and he said, oh, I do prostates, and so I'm like, okay. And my mouth is agape. My husband is, he had the wits about him to ask. He says, how many female veterans have you operated on? And he says, a couple. And I said, a couple as in less than two? And he says, well, I can't really get into that. I said, well, I don't really want to know what the procedures were. He said, but 2 female veterans? He says, yes. And I said, well, I'm not going to disparage your skills. I said, but I'm a little uncomfortable with that low of a number. And I said, I don't think I want the VA to do this. I'll figure out some way to, have it done through my husband's insurance, and we'll fight. And so he just kind of looked at me and he says, well, surgery is surgery. And I said, would you want a gynecologist operating on your prostate? And he says, touche. And they both walked out the door. But I had to fight like 2 pit bulls in a ring to get this done. And anytime you get anything done through the VA, it's kind of like that. It's hard enough to be trying to get through breast cancer, not be treated as a hysterical female. It's even harder when you go through the VA. And you wouldn't think it would be that way because we have so many female veterans. So it's very possible it could have been something from when I was at Fort Dix, because our motor pool was actually built over the top of an old plutonium spill. So who knows? Women get exposed to things in the military that you wouldn't normally be exposed to in civilian life. And it's one more thing that they don't want to be linked to the service, because then they have to pay to treat it, or women can use that as a service-connected claim. There's so many things. And women's veteran health care, you'd think would be more advanced than it is. I mean, women have been in the military just about since the military began. I was a pilot, a civilian pilot, so I wouldn't be able to see to fly. I lost that. I wasn't able to drive myself. And even everyday tasks around the house were a lot harder when you can't see. Not being able to see is a whole new level of just helplessness and darkness and despair that you just can't even imagine. I felt like I couldn't get out. And all those thorns in here were just kind of the pain of the surgeries and just everything else. It's hard to look at yourself and see those scars and not and to just not see damage and ugliness and feel ugly. So I kind of started researching body image post mastectomy, and I happened on the Scar Project. And when I saw those pictures, I'm like, I didn't see ugly. I saw strength and beauty. And I thought, wow. And I thought that is so awesome. But it was for younger, ladies. So, and I don't even know how I ended up finding the Grace Project. I don't know why. It just somehow it called to me, and I just knew that I was going to see this, but it healed me in a way so deep that it's hard to explain. And I just think I would have a huge piece of my life missing if I hadn't done it. It's a photograph of your soul.